I really love a textured tone-on-tone background. So for my Easter layout today, I am going to be creating a fun textured background, and I'm going to show you 2 other ways that you could accomplish a similar look with different supplies if you don't have what I have. I'm also using the Easter Joy paper from Stampin' Up. One thing that I love to do if I'm doing a really subtle textured background is bring in some pops of color in my photos, in the paper that I'm choosing. And this collection is really pretty. It has some foiled accents in it, some really pretty fresh spring colors, and it is super thick. So if you want to make like some Easter treat boxes, that sort of thing, this collection would be perfect for that. I was thinking maybe I'll whip up some with the leftover paper for my daughter's class. And I think they would hold up beautifully since they are so thick. You can see this kind of like copper foiling in there. And lots of bright, fun colors. My photos have some really great complements here. We got the yellow, we have the light pink, and they pretty much match perfectly. I have some brighter colors in the flowers back there, but they're not really a focal point. Oh, I'm not sure if I showed you that. This is one of my favorite patterns on the back there. The front of these papers is almost slippery a little bit, and then the back is really like a matte paper feel. It's very interesting paper. You can see we got the foil there. We even have some green foil stripes. So I think that is going to add some fun pops. I have Easter photos from 2024 that I'm going to scrapbook. This is part of a collaboration with the creative design team. Most of the girls have been publishing videos this week. There is a couple more still to come. So I'll make sure to link that playlist at the end of today's video. See, I had to slip Frankie in there because he's my baby too, and he actually posed for a photo. He's notoriously bad for posing for photos, but I think this time I had like a handful of treats with me, and so he was locking on to me there because he knew he was going to get a treat. But I included some like really playful ones. I do remember this photo session being challenging. She was very excited and hyper. So I got some, a little bit more posed portraits. And then I included a lot of fun ones because they just show her personality so good. For the background that I'm doing today, I'm actually going to be doing some stitching. So this is not typically something I do sitting at my desk. I like to figure out what I want to do, cut the pieces, and then go off, watch a show or something and do my stitching while I'm doing something else, because it's just something mindless. Once you get in the rhythm of it, you don't have to think too hard about it. So I have 2 12x12s here. This is a Paige Evans cut file. It's a stitching file, and she does these in all kinds of different themes. This is one I just had in my library. And the difference with a stitching file is that it cuts little holes. So you have all these pre-pierced holes. Now you could freehand or trace around something and pierce holes, but the thing I like about this is that everything is fairly evenly spaced and I don't have to think too hard about it. So I already cut these out on my Cricut. And you can buy different files from Paige Evans. I will leave her link down in the description box for you, so you can go check it out and see what she has currently for stitching files. I've bought mine over time, so I couldn't even tell you when this one is from, but I just liked the kind of geometric sort of plain pattern. You could even just do lines like with a ruler and do like sort of a plaid look to it. But I'm going to show you the stitching in a second, just like the start of it. You could sit down and just like stitch the whole background and then figure out what you want to do. But I like the idea of saving time and saving thread. So what I'm going to do is place some, I'm probably going to use photo placeholders just in case they get all kind of wrinkly. I'm not going to attach my photos, but you could attach your photos or cardstock that's the same size as your photos, so that as you're stitching, you see how far you need to go. I would just lightly attach it, like just a strip of adhesive down the middle, so you can still move and like get under the edges if needed or reposition. But that way you aren't doing all this area under here that's going to get covered and wasting your time and materials. So I will figure out how I want my photos first before I dive into stitching. I am just going to use embroidery floss. Now, keep in mind, if you use colors, your background is really going to pop. So you're going to have high contrast. I could pull like the pink, the blue, the yellow, and do like a multicolored background or even just a single color and do the background. But I love doing white on white. That gives me a subtle textured background that actually feels very like luxe in person. So I'm just going to be using white for that. And then typically I keep these on like a book ring and I switch it out for whatever colors for whatever project I'm doing. And then I slip a couple of needles in, especially if you're stitching on the go. You want to have more than one needle. You can see I have another one over here, just in case you lose one or misplace it. Sometimes I'll have like 3 rolling around in here somewhere, but I love having them on this ring. So I have this little bag. I got this once upon a time from Close to My Heart, and I can just chuck it in there. Another tool I always have is some tape, because I like to tape my ends and that way they stay flat. And then I got these little folding scissors off of Amazon, and they are sharp enough to trim off your threads, and they fold up, so they're really handy. They don't take a ton of space, but I'd say you want to have some scissors handy for trimming your threads, some tape. You can also knot the ends, but it ends up being more bulky. So I will show you that when I tape that. And for needles, you want tapestry needles. These are blunt on the end, so you're not going to be like poking yourself and making yourself bleed as you're trying to stitch on paper. The blunt ends work perfectly. This is sizes 18 to 22. I use them interchangeably. I don't really notice too much of a difference between that. But those are kind of the basic supplies you're going to need. Okay, I'm going to get my photos kind of placed where I want them on both pages. And then I'm going to show you the stitching. And make sure you stick around. I'm not going to have a really long section on stitching. I just want to show you how to do it. And then I'm going to give you a couple other ideas if you don't want to stitch or you don't have the supplies to do that. I have a couple other really fun ideas that will give you a similar look, but without the time it takes to stitch. Okay, I have my photo mats on. They are stuck down just in the center so I can get around all the edges as needed, because I will want to go right up to the edge and I might have to kind of poke my needle under the edge and things like that to get where I want to go. But I think this is the layout I want to do. I would have liked it if this pattern was a little bit tighter and closer together so I didn't have quite so much open area, but I couldn't find anything that I already owned that kind of was a tighter pattern, but I think this will still work just fine. We can see a lot that's going over here. And then I'm going to overlap my title. Probably going to do like a Cricut cut for my title and just put it kind of overlapping the bottom of these photos. And I'm planning to use some embellishments on this side anyways so that I can kind of just fill in a little bit of the blank spaces. So where you're really going to be seeing it is around the edges. So I'm going to take my embroidery floss, push it through the eye of my needle. One thing I like about the tapestry needles is the eye is bigger than on normal needles, so it's a little bit easier. And if you want, you don't have to use all 6 strands. This can be separated out. You could do it, if you want to do it in half, you could do 3 or you could do 2 and make it less dimensional. When you use all 6 strands, you're going to end up with a little bit more dimension, which is fine. That's what I like. But if you would prefer something a little bit flatter, then just pull these apart, cut your length, and then like pull it either with 3 strands or 2 strands, and then do the same as what I'm doing here. I'm going to start over in this corner here. We kind of have like little petals almost coming off of these. So I think what I want to do is, here's my center hole. I'm going to go to this next hole. So not the center hole. We are going to be doing a back stitch. I'm going to pull this through. And the reason why I'm starting here is because if we stitch all the way down here, come all the way up, then it's easy to jump on to the next petal. So I'd recommend starting in the middle, and you'll have way less like cutting and taping that you need to do. So I know this might be a little tricky seeing the white on white, but I love the effect of white on white, and it's subtle but also really nice. And it doesn't distract from what you have going on. Keep in mind, you could do this with any color. So let's say you want to do a light pink background. Well, you could choose a coordinating light pink floss and you would have the same tone on tone, but in a color. It looks equally as nice. I have just taped down my end here out of the way so it's not going to be covering any of the holes. And then I'm going to flip this back over to the front side. So I came up this hole here. I'm going to go back down the center of this design, pull it through, and then let's see here. I'm going to come up this next hole. So this is called a back stitch because technically you are stitching backwards. And then I'm going to go down this hole. I'm going to come in just a little bit closer for you guys. There we go. All right, so you can see how my stitches are going. Then the next open hole, I'm going to come up and go down. Now there are different types of stitch you can do. If you do something like a chain stitch, that would give you a very thick design. It would actually look really nice on this one because the holes are quite far apart on this design. So I think that would give you a very nice look. It's a little bit slower, takes a little bit more thread, and so I want to do something that's a little bit faster, and so back stitch is the perfect thing. And you can see that as you get going, it's kind of mindless. Like once you get your stitch figured out, which hole to go down and up, you can just zip right along and not pay too much attention, listen to an audiobook, watch a show. I mean, you still kind of have to look at what you're doing, finding your hole. So you might not want to, watch something that you've never seen before. But you could even sit and have a conversation with someone. And you can see just like that, I am almost at the end here. So I'll show you what to do when we get to the end. If you are having lots of problems of like tangling floss and stuff, it could be that your floss is just too long for you to handle. So next time, maybe cut yourself a shorter piece. Now here with this one, we don't have to do anything special. We're just going to skip over to this hole right here. And then we're going to go back down this hole. And just like that, we've turned the corner and we are going up the other side here. Sometimes I can find the hole just with my needle. Sometimes I need to flip it over so I can see with my eyes. But there you go. That's what we have so far. And this will probably take me a couple of hours to do, but I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back. All right, I completed the stitching on the background. I'll hold it up here closer so you can see what that looks like. Just love all that texture, but it's subtle because it's tone on tone. I love the finished look of this. And it did take me probably about double the amount of time that I had thought it would. It was probably about 3.5, 4 hours to do all the stitching. But I love the finished look, so I think it's totally worth it. Now I did decide to go ahead and matte my photos with Balmy Blue, which I know I don't have any other blue going on here except for her eyes, but I'm going to bring in blue from the pattern paper. I didn't want to use pink or yellow since we have so much of that going on in the photo, and obviously white is not going to pop against that background. So this is what I settled on. I am just noticing that I forgot to matte my 3x4s. It's really handy. I print my 4x6s with a perfect white border, but I have not yet found a way to print perfect white borders for the 3x4s. So I think I want to fix that. I'll have to crop down my photos just a little bit and put on white mats. So I'm going to do that before I keep going. Okay, I think that looks much better. Definitely more balanced with the other photos. And now we can move on to some embellishing. So I cut out some of these grass dies. This is from the Mixed Florals die set. And I really love this big bunch of grass. And I thought this would be perfect because what I want to do is embellish this with Easter eggs. And I thought this would be a really good background for the Easter eggs to be up against. And I'm kind of thinking maybe tucking these under or trimming them down. so that they come out both sides. I don't think, maybe in front of the photo. I guess I'll have to try. Either over top of the photo or tuck it underneath the photo. And then the same over here, probably definitely tuck these ones under. I think I left myself some room at the edges, so I should be able to just pry that up and just kind of stick it under or trim off some of it. And then I cut out some Easter eggs from the pattern paper. This is garden eggs from Close to My Heart. It's the only egg die that I have. It's about 2 inches. And I just cut an assortment of the papers so that I could play around with kind of spreading out the patterns. I want to do like a row of eggs here and then a couple little clusters of eggs. And then I also did a print then cut title. So this is completely flat. The pink is printed on there and then I die cut it out on my Cricut. And that works really good and pretty fast to make a title, especially with these thin little lines. Cutting those with your Cricut is kind of a nightmare. So I did this in the pretty and pink color. And then this is going to overlap the eggs kind of right below my photos right here. I've already put it up on Dimensionals because I know I want it to have a little bit of space between this and the eggs so that it's not just like right flat down on it, but it has a little bit of lift to it. Decided to go with pink because I thought yellow, there's just a lot of yellow going on and it would be too light with a white background. So I thought the pink was a good way to tie in those ears. Plus we have pinks in our paper. I didn't want to go too dark because I'm trying to keep this light and airy. I don't really have a lot of dark going on here other than like the brown in the background and some black on Frankie and the brown in her hair. But I didn't really want to bring in brown. On my eggs, I am not planning to use the brown side of the eggs. I'm planning to use the colorful side. So there's little hints of brown here and there, but not a ton. If you don't know how to do a print then cut title, I do have a video that's all about titles, and I will link that down in the description box. Just click on the little button that says more, and it should drop down, and then you can click on that video to watch the tutorial. There's several title ideas. It's kind of my big title video. And one of them is print then cut, and I show you how to do it. So first off, I guess I need to decide where my grass is going, if it's going to overlap the front. I think it would actually help because I do have some empty areas on my background, and it would kind of block those out. I think that would actually look pretty cute. I'm going to peel up my background a little bit and just try this. That would also look good. I caught it on the adhesive there, so it's just peeling a little bit now. I'll put it over here because I know I want to stick this one behind the photo mat. But I am thinking this would look pretty just overlapping. So it kind of looks like she's looking out from between the grasses. To stick these down, I'm just going to use some of my Barely Art glue. Since it has a nice fine tip, I think that'll work well with getting some glue on all these little bits. Usually I don't worry about sticking the whole thing down, just certain areas here and there. Now the only tricky thing about using such fine beads of glue is that they do tend to dry pretty quick, so you don't have a ton of time. Just press that down. If there's any areas that I think I want to adhere more, I can always go and squirt a little bit of glue underneath. Okay, these ones I ended up trimming down a little bit so I could put them under. This one I actually trimmed off and followed this curve just with my scissors and tucked it, just the bottom is tucked behind, but then the top I laid over top of the photo. And I really like how that looks. So now I'm going to figure out my egg placement. I want to have them kind of like laying this way and that way, not all super straight. When I have them down here, I kind of want them barely overlapping the bottom of my photo mat. At least that's what I'm thinking, because I want to take up some of this space down here with my title. Kind of want my title to be sort of right there. So I am going to cover up a little bit of that stitching. It's just hard to predict exactly where you're going to want everything. Sometimes you need to overstitch just a little bit so that you can make sure you have everything covered. It's better to have too much stitching than not enough and having to go back and fill holes. I want to make sure I'm putting these at different angles and also mixing up the patterns so they're not all the same together. And then I'm just going to lay my title over here and see if I like how that looks. Just want to make sure I'm happy with the placement before I go ahead and stick things down. I feel like this side could maybe use an extra egg too. kind of like that. This is how I want my eggs placed. They're not stuck down yet. I was just going for spreading out the patterns, you know, tilting them different ways. And I think I like where these are. I'm going to try and make sure that I put these at about the same height so that it looks like they're sitting like flush here. So I might have to play around with that a little bit. And then I want to pop up the ones that are on top so we get a little bit of dimension. I think these ones I'm going to do all flat because I have my title popped up, and just use glue to stick them down. Whenever you're working over thread like this, it's quite dimensional to be taping stuff over. So if you need to go over top, I would use liquid glue. And that's what I'm going to use on these eggs, just to make sure that it actually binds to the page and I don't have eggs coming off. Now I do feel like I need something small up here. So I took some lemon lolly cardstock and a retired tab die that I have. And the word Easter is from the same set where I got the egg die. And then I just hand wrote 2024. I don't really have a story for this. I really wanted to document her Easter photos. And I have other photos from this Easter, like egg hunting and playing with her toys and all those kinds of things. But I really wanted to just keep her little like mini photo shoot that we did. So I don't have really a story behind it, but I think that's okay because I know I have the supporting pages to go along with this. I'm going to go ahead and stick these down. When I'm looking at attaching, you know, a cluster or a bunch of things that I have already laid out, I like to start from the bottom first and work my way up. So by bottom, I mean the bottommost layer. This one is layered onto both of those. So if I put some glue on this and then just kind of get it back under there, I think that will be good enough. You don't have to cover your whole piece in glue in order for it to hold. Especially with this glue, it's quite strong. And I'm going to do this one next because it's layered under these two. You might not always get it back in the same place, and if you want, you could just take your glue and squirt it underneath. Sometimes I do that just to make the gluing process easier, but I think this will end up being close enough to where I need it to be. I'm going to finish off this layout with Pearlized faceted circles. These are part of the Lovely and Beautiful collection, and they are gorgeous. I don't think the camera can do them justice, but there's some white ones here. There's like a pale pink, a more coral, and then there's a white with kind of iridescent sparkle on it. And those are the ones that I'm going to use for this page. Just sprinkle in a few here and there using my pick tool. As you can see, the white ones are definitely a favorite. I've used this one a few times now, and I am going to need to order another pack. There we go. I just like to go in like 2s and 1s, so we kind of have like little triangles. Just little spots of glitter here and there. I think this is all that my layout needs. You can see that twinkle when I bring it up here. Those are gorgeous embellishments. And actually, I'm just going to shift this over just a little bit so they're not like stacked right underneath each other. There, I like that better. And here is, you can see some of the metallic shine on the pattern papers. There's a little bit kind of catching the light. This definitely looks like a simpler page, but the work was put in the background. And remember, I did promise to show you the other texture techniques. So if you don't have anything to do stitching with, you don't have a machine to cut the holes for you, you can always hand pierce your holes, but it definitely is easier to use a stitching cut file. If you want to get a similar look, you could use a cut file. Now this one, I'm not exactly sure where it came from. It's been sitting in my white tray, where I keep all my white cardstock, the tray. It's been sitting there for ages. So I cut it for some project, never used it, but you can see you can get a similar tone-on-tone look. Another fun way is, if you want it to stand out a little bit more, would be to use like a very soft gray or a very pale yellow. And that would make it pop a little bit more, but you can definitely still see that tone-on-tone texture like you get with the stitching. Or another option would be a stencil. Ignore how messy this stencil is. You can tell it has been well loved, but you could get the same kind of look by using an embossing paste, a texture paste. This one is shimmery white embossing paste. That would make a beautiful background. So this is just a wet product like that, has some texture to it. You apply it with a palette knife and just smooth it through your stencil. And of course, the thicker it is, the longer it takes to dry. You will probably get a little bit of a warping to your background because it is a wet product, and anytime moisture meets paper, you get some curling. But that shouldn't be an issue really, because once you put it in your album, it will flatten out. But you always want to make sure that you wash your stencils, wash your palette knives right away. If you get this on anything like around your work area, wipe it off before it dries. And Stampin' Up! Does have a plain one. So if you don't like the idea of glitter, it's just called embossing paste, I believe. And you can go for just like a plain white tone-on-tone background. I hope this gave you some fun ideas for your own pages. Now make sure you go and check out the Creative Design Team playlist and see what the other design team members have been up to. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon with another video.